All right, good evening. My name is Catherine Kaplan. I am with SEB Housing, and this is the information session for the 48 affordable rental units at Hathon in Medway, Massachusetts. So the purpose of this information session is to give you a little bit more background information on the available units. We're also going to cover the application, the eligibility and lottery processes, and also what to expect after the lottery itself. So if you have any questions during the session, you are encouraged to go ahead and either type them into the chat in Zoom, and I'll be asking throughout the presentation as well if you have any questions. As you came into the session, you were muted, so just go ahead and unmute yourself as well if you'd rather ask aloud. So the session is being recorded, as you heard when you came into the meeting. The recording will be saved to SEB Housing's YouTube channel, and that will be available later on tonight. So if you have any questions after the session, maybe you didn't think of something while we were meeting tonight, but you still have questions on the Hathon or how to apply, you can email us at info@sebhousing.com. The email is the easiest way to get in touch with us, the quickest way to get in touch, but if you would prefer to call us, you can do that as well. And our phone number is listed here for you as well. So if you have any questions about logistics or having trouble viewing the screen, just let me know. Just want to start by giving some background information on who we are. So SEB Housing is an off-site affordable housing consulting group. We're not the on-site management team or the leasing office for the building. We've been hired by the developer to market the affordable units at the Hathon, conduct this information session, collect and review applications, and determine an applicant's eligibility before we eventually run the lottery. In the initial phases, we are your main point of contact rather than the leasing office at Hathon. But then further along in the process, the on-site management team will take over as your main contact for these units. So there's really two broad steps in the process. The first being to apply for the affordable housing program. And during this step, you're going to be in touch with SEB Housing. We can answer any questions you have on the affordable housing program. We're going to review your application and supporting income, asset, and tax documentation. And then if you're eligible, you're going to be entered into the lottery and given a position on the waiting list. The second step in the process is determining lease eligibility, and you'll be in touch with the Hathon leasing office during that time. And their lease eligibility screening is separate from the screenings that you're going to have at SEB Housing. Their rental or lease screenings might include credit, rental history, background checks, that sort of thing that you might be familiar with from renting apartments in the past. So once approved by the leasing office, you'd be working with them to reserve and lease an apartment. So our website is on the screen right now, sebhousing.com. If you haven't already, you might want to see where Hathon is listed on our website. So if you go to our main website there and click on affordable housing opportunities, and you select I want to rent, you can then find a page specific to Hathon. And it will include downloadable versions of the application and the information packet. And that information packet contains most of the material that I'll be covering during this session tonight. We're not going to have time to cover every single thing that's in there. So it is recommended that even if you attend this session or watch it after tonight on YouTube, that you take a look at that information packet, because there might be some useful information about the property in there for you. So if you choose to apply for one of the affordable units at Hathon, you're going to first need to complete the lottery application, and you can submit that application with your supporting documentation in one of several ways. So we try to make it as easy for you as possible by giving a few different options here. The first, you could email it to us. You would just email it to info@sebhousing.com. You could scan it in that way as well, send it as an attachment. You could fax it to the fax number that is listed on the first page of the application. You can send it by regular mail, or you could drop it in our 24-hour secure drop box that is located at our office in Needham. If you're in that area, the address is 257 Hillside Ave, and we do have a drop box that's located on the left side of the building. We check it each day. So whichever one of those options is most convenient for you, you just want to get your application in as soon as possible to start the process. It is a fairly lengthy application, as you're going to see when you're reviewing it. There's a lot of supporting documentation that's required, which we're going to talk a lot more about tonight. And the applications are due by 2 p.m. on November 21st. So right about a month from now will be the deadline for applications for the Hathon. They need to be postmarked by that November 21st deadline to be considered. You don't need to be a resident of Medway to apply for this lottery. There will be several units that will have local preference for residents of Medway, and we'll discuss that later on as well. All right, so some more background information on the actual apartments at Hathon. They do have a website that I have listed on the screen here. So it's livehathon.com. If you haven't checked it out already, you might want to do that. There's a full list of amenities. There's some renderings of the building, etc., things that you may not have seen before. If you want to take a look at it. So Hathon is a 190 unit rental apartment community located in Medway. There are going to be 48 affordable apartments rented to households with incomes at or below 80% of the area median income through this application process. Each of the units, the affordable and the market units, will include stainless steel appliances, quartz countertops, walk-in closets, in-unit laundry, washer and dryer there. Amenities at the community include a resort-style pool, a fitness center, outdoor fire pits and grills, a game room, a dog run, and the community itself is located close to nature trails and is also within walking distance of a local shopping center. So a lot going on here. The rents for these affordable units will be considerably less than the rents that are going to be charged for the market rate units within the development. The affordable units are 1, 2, and 3 bedroom apartments that are being offered. There are 19 one-bedroom apartments that feature 786 square feet, and they're going to rent for $2,104. 2 of those one-bedroom apartments are considered disabled accessible and have features for persons with mobility impairments. There are 24 two-bedroom apartments that will feature 1,065 square feet, and they're going to rent for $2,322. One of those two-bedroom apartments is considered disabled accessible and has those features for persons with mobility impairments. There are 5 three-bedroom affordable apartments, and they're going to feature 1,314 square feet, and they're going to rent for $2,528. One of those 3-bedroom apartments has features for persons with hearing impairment. The tenants of the affordable apartments and of all the apartments will be responsible for all utilities. The heating and hot water are gas, and the cooking is electric. I know we get that question from interested applicants during these sessions a lot, so just want to point that out. I spoke with the management team at Hathon this week, and they confirmed that the model unit at Hathon will be, as well as the amenity spaces, will be available for tours beginning November 15th. And they anticipate that the rest of the units will be ready for move-in come mid-December. So that'll be soon after the lottery. So they're coming up soon. There shouldn't be too much of a delay in any lease signing at all for these, because that is coming right around the corner. So this particular affordable housing opportunity is not subsidized housing. So the affordable rent amounts are not set based on individual applicants' income or financial circumstances. So this means that the rent does not change if your income changes. These are set rent amounts. The rents for this housing program are set using a formula that is based on HUD, so Housing and Urban Development, area median income for the Boston area. And that is where Medway falls, in the Boston area. And they're set with the idea that the amount should be affordable to households making at or below 80% of the area median income. The rents may increase one time per year, and this typically occurs around the time that HUD revises the area median income each spring. There's always advance notice if there's a change in the rent amount, and they're usually pretty modest, somewhere between $25 and $75, and rents will never change in the middle of your lease term. So the affordable units at Hathon were selected by the owner, and they were approved by the Department of Housing and Community Development, DHCD, as being representative of the units in the building as a whole. So this means that they're not the affordable units aren't the smallest units. They're not all clustered in one location in the building, and they're not in any way identifiable as affordable from the outside. It is possible that there are going to be more interested in eligible applicants than available units, so that's why the apartments are being made available through this lottery process. Only made available to households with incomes at or below that 80% area median income. We're going to talk about what those levels are in just a minute too. All right, so we've covered a lot of logistical information and gave you a basic overview of the unit. I see that there's a question here in chat, so I'm going to go ahead and take a look at that. It's a direct one, but I will let you know if it would apply to everyone here. So is the price? Yep, so the prices that were just on the screen are the affordable rent amount. I don't have the market rent amount, but I know that it is at least several $100s more if you were to rent at the market amount. There is no starting rent because the rents are set for the unit, and they don't, the amounts will not fluctuate with your income or anything like that. So that is the rent amount for the first year that you'd be in a lease. All right, so the eligibility requirements for the affordable housing program. So in the information packet, you'll see that these are listed on page 4. And there's really 4 eligibility requirements. And the first is, which is kind of most obviously, as we've been talking about, income, or that the applying household must have an income that is at or below that 80% of AMI to qualify for the affordable unit. We'll talk a lot more about income in just a few moments. The second item to keep in mind for eligibility purposes is that household priority is going to be given based on household composition. So what that means is when you're filling out your application, you're going to indicate what type of household you are. So you're either type 1, type 2, or type 3 for this lottery. And your household type is tied to the priority that you're going to have on the wait list for specific units. So for example, a type 2 household can apply for a 3-bedroom unit, but you should be aware that any type 3 households will be given priority on the waiting list for a 3-bedroom unit. And the idea of household types is really that the larger households are given priority for larger units, and these larger units are not always occupied by households who might not require that space. So a 1-person household renting a 3-bedroom apartment, for example. Page 7 on the information packet lists more information about household type. The third eligibility criteria is that households cannot own a home upon move-in. So if you do own a home now, it just needs to be sold prior to leasing at Hathon. So you can apply for the lottery if you own a home right now. You just would need to sell the property and be off the deed by the time you are signing a lease at Hathon. The fourth eligibility criteria doesn't come up very often, but households cannot have financial interest in the development. It can't be considered a related party. So these units are being offered by toll brothers. So if you work for them, or if you're related to them in some way, or related to the owner in some way, you may not be eligible for this lottery. So just keep that in mind. And then to circle back to the first eligibility criteria to explain more about income and assets, I'm going to go ahead and move that to the next slide. Since these are affordable units, like I said, they're going to be made available at prices lower than the market rate units within the community, and they're only going to be made available to households that fit, whose income is at or below these amounts. So, actually, let's go back there. So the 80% of AMI income amounts are listed on your screen now. And for anybody who is listening by phone only, I'm just going to list them here for you. So the maximum income limits are set by household size. So this includes everyone who would be living in your household and would be listed on the lease. For a household size of 1, the maximum household income to qualify for the affordable housing program is $78,300. A household size of 2, that amount is $89,500. A household size of 3, the maximum income limit is $100,700. A household size of 4, the maximum income is $111,850. Household size of 5, $120,800, and a household size of 6, $129,750. So all households are going to be required to submit supporting income tax or income asset and tax documentation. And the required documents vary a little bit based on, depending on your sources of income. So, and we'll talk about that a little bit in a minute, but the application is very clear on what is needed. So if you're employed, we need X amount of pay stubs. If you're self-employed, it'll let you know what you need to submit. If you receive Social Security benefits, for example, it'll let you know what to submit and all of that. For every household, regardless of what their income situation is, you will need to submit copies of federal tax returns for the last year and copies of any bank statements for the last 3 months. Section 2 of the application is very detailed and lists all of the specific income verifications that we'll need, for example, how many pay stubs and that sort of thing. So just to give a basic overview of how your income will be calculated, income for this program, the Affordable Housing Program, is counted as a projection of your income over the next 12 months for all household members. So all income for all household members is included. This includes bonuses, overtime, that sort of thing as well. The only exceptions to this are minors. So anyone under the age of 18 in the household who is earning a wage, we're not going to count those wages. If you have a 16-year-old in your household who has a job, we do not need to count the income towards your total household income. The second exception is that for dependent full-time students who are working, we're only going to count the first $480 worth of wages when determining your eligibility. We're required to count gross income, not net, so the amount that you make before taxes are taken out. And we recognize that you're not taking home the full amount of your salary if you're employed, but gross income, again, is required to be counted according to the program regulations. So everyone's income circumstances are unique. We recognize that. Some applicants are going to have a consistent weekly salary throughout the year, while others are going to be self-employed or they might be working seasonally. So in those circumstances, we may need to look further back in the past to project your anticipated household income for the next 12 months. And then specifically for applicants who are self-employed, you're going to need to complete a profit and loss statement and provide supporting documentation. There is a sample profit and loss statement included at the end of the application if you are self-employed. So that is there for you. If you're self-employed, again, your business expenses are considered, but for households who are not self-employed, it is always going to be that gross income that we must count. So in general, when we're looking at household income, any income that you have been making, we're going to assume that you will continue making it going forward unless we have some sort of definitive documentation to consider showing that you're no longer going to be earning that income source. So an example of that might be a written letter from your employer stating that bonuses or overtime will not be available in the coming year, that sort of thing. We're not permitted to accept statements from applicants though. So if we have documentation that's showing your income for the last year was $80,000, and an applicant is saying that they plan to work far less in the future, meaning in the coming year, and you're only going to make $50,000, we'd still need to count that $80,000 unless we have some sort of a written statement to consider that would be verifying otherwise, meaning that your income was going to drop in the coming year. So we're relying on a lot of information from the past to project your income going forward. And then some sources of income to keep in mind. These are all listed on a table on the application, but just so you don't overlook any when you're filling out the application, you want to write down any wages, self-employed, wages from an employer. If you're receiving benefits from Social Security, child support, alimony, unemployment, workman's comp, pension, all of that, even periodic payments from friends or family, you're going to want to write on there. And then any assets that are generated or that are generating income. So there's no minimum income requirements for the affordable housing program. However, most management teams, including the team at Hathon, want to be sure that all tenants can afford the rent. So regardless of whether or not the unit is market rate or affordable, they want to make sure that whoever is living there is able to pay the rent. So the management company has set a minimum household income equivalent to 2 times the monthly rent. And these amounts are listed in the information packet, but for households looking to rent a 1-bedroom apartment at Hathon, the approximate minimum household income is $50,500. For a 2-bedroom, the household should make $55,700. And if you're looking to rent a 3-bedroom apartment, the minimum income amount is $60,670. Households with mobile housing vouchers, so Section 8, MRBP, those types of vouchers, can disregard those minimum incomes because they don't apply. But any applicant who does have a housing voucher is going to want to check with the agency that issues the vouchers, so that the housing authority or the housing agency, to confirm that the rent amounts at Hathon are within the agency's payment standards or maximum rent. The leasing office at Hathon would eventually be confirming with your housing authority that the rents are permissible, but it's best for you to know sooner rather than later if the rents will work for you. Applicants without a voucher, you must have household incomes between the minimum income floor that I just mentioned and the program maximum income limit. The only exception to this is households with incomes that are just below the minimum income amount. If a household has a household income that is close to the minimum income amount, but has liquid assets that might be able to access in order to afford the rent, their application may be considered by the leasing office. So basically, the minimum income amounts are not as strictly enforced as the income limits, because the income limits are a program requirement and the minimum income floor is something that the leasing office has institutes and basically enforces. So if they are reviewing your application, it is going to ultimately be their decision if your income meets those minimum income requirements. There's no asset limit for affordable rental opportunities. So you could apply for affordable unit at Hathon and have significant asset and a significant amount of assets. You could be retired, you could have a lot of assets in the bank. We are still going, although there is no asset limit, we are still going to need to collect information related to your assets. So that is because income could be generated from those assets, and we would need to count that as household income. So when you're thinking of assets, you should be thinking of checking and savings accounts, retirement accounts, but not only those types of things, we are going to need to have statements from any Venmo or PayPal accounts, stocks and bonds, that sort of stuff. We don't need to we don't need to verify personal assets such as cars or anything like that. So we talked a lot about the eligibility criteria for the housing program and the lottery. So just a reminder, if you have any questions, you can go ahead and type them into the chat, or you can unmute yourself to ask a question. I'm going to move on to the lottery eligibility. All right, so I mentioned earlier, if you're interested, we encourage you to apply as early as possible to get the process started. Do want to mention too that if you are interested in more than one unit size, you can go ahead and apply for more than one apartment. So if you think you might be interested, for example, in a 1-bedroom and a 2-bedroom apartment, you're not really sure which yet, you can indicate that on your application. There's check boxes for the income sizes, the apartment sizes that you are applying for. There's really no downside to applying to more than one. There is a potential downside to applying for only 1 unit size. If you decide later on that you were actually interested in a larger apartment, those units might already be taken. So just keep that in mind if you're interested. So once the lottery application comes into SCB Housing, we're going to review your application and contact you if any information is missing or appears incorrect. So you have the chance to correct that and resubmit as necessary. Most applicants are not submitting 100% completed applications on the first try. So just keep that in mind. There's a couple reasons for that. The first being that there's just a lot of information required. And the second is because sometimes even if you do submit all of the information that was originally requested, it could generate further questions from us when you send it in to us. So if there's a question we have on a bank deposit or pay stubs generate some sort of question that could lead to us needing more information from you. And that's completely fine. You'll be given additional time to supply that information to us. So we're trying to be as accommodating as possible. But that's, again, why we encourage you to get your application in as early as possible just to get the process started. So if you are found eligible for the lottery, you're going to be sent a lottery application number in the form of a series of numbers. So this is just going to be the number that is drawn in the lottery. It's meant to be an anonymous identifier, so your name is not called out during a lottery. It's not a ranking of any sort. It just corresponds with the order in which your application was received. So if you were the very first person to submit an application, your number is going to be A.001. The letter that you receive with that application number is going to also confirm whether or not your household qualifies for local preference. So you will have indicated on your application that you believe your household qualifies for that preference, and the necessary verification would have been submitted along with your application. So local preference might apply to you if your household lives in Medway, you work for the town of Medway, or if you work for a business located in the town, or if you have a child, or if you're the guardian of a child that's attending Medway Public Schools. Up to 70% of the affordable units at Hathon will have local preference, which means that some local preference households will have priority for those units when compared to households who don't have local preference. But you also want to keep in mind that for 2- and 3-bedroom households, household type is more heavily weighted as a factor in determining your waitlist placement. So what that means is if, for example, you are a type 2 household and you apply for a 2-bedroom unit, you're still going to have priority over any type 1 household who apply for a 2-bedroom apartment. So really, in short, if you do not have local preference, you shouldn't be deterred at all from applying. And then more information can be found on local preference on page 17 of the information packet if you are interested in that. The email itself as well is going to confirm the bedroom sizes that you applied for. So when you get that eligibility notice from us, you want to make sure that you're checking all the details in there and make sure that they seem accurate to you. because there is a lot of info related to your application. It's also going to confirm if you mentioned needing a disability or sensory accessible unit. And I should also mention that households who require the features of the disabled accessible or sensory accessible units will have priority on those waiting lists over households who do not need the features of the unit. So if at any time during the process you're found to be ineligible for the lottery, during the screening process, maybe you're over income, you own a home, something like that, you're going to be informed, and we encourage you to contact us with any questions about notices that you receive from our office. So the lottery is going to be held virtually on December 1st at 6 p.m. Same format as this information session via Zoom. And during that lottery, numbers will be drawn from a lottery box. They'll be held up to the screen and recorded. So we have record of what happened that night. So during the lottery, every lottery number will be drawn. Sometimes when we think of the word lottery, we think there's just one winner, but in this case, that won't be the case. The lottery is really just held in order for us to establish the waiting list for these units. So if a type 1 household is drawn first in the lottery and they apply for a 2-bedroom unit, they're not going to be first on the waiting list because type 2 and type 2 households will have priority on that 2-bedroom waiting list. So in general, it's more beneficial if your number is called first or early in the lottery, but it may not be the deciding factor on whether or not you'll be moving forward in the process to lease the unit. Also, households who were entered in the lottery might be found ineligible by the leasing office or might ultimately decide not to rent the unit. So if your number is drawn later on in the lottery, you shouldn't be discouraged. You might still have the opportunity to move forward in the process and rent one of the affordable units at Hathon. So following the lottery, we're going to then populate the waiting list. We're going to take household type, local preference, and whether your household requires the accessibility features of some of these units into consideration. And we're going to do our best to send the waiting list to the applicants as soon as possible. So either that night normally after the lottery or the next morning. And the list will be sent to all applicants by email if we have that email address for you. So when you're reviewing that email, you're going to find your lottery application and you're going to see, your lottery application number, and you're going to see where it fell on the waiting list. So you don't need to attend the lottery because you will be informed very soon after it where you were drawn. So after that email is sent, after the lottery is held, you're going to have a better idea of whether or not you're going to be invited to move forward in the process and apply for a lease with the leasing office. And so at this time, following the lottery and the establishment of the waiting list, we're going to contact the top households on each waiting list, and we're going to put you in touch with the management team at Hathon. Your contact information is going to be provided to the leasing office, and vice versa. You will have that management team's information as well at that point, and you can go ahead and apply for the lease, tour the unit, all that sort of thing. So at this point, we at SCB Housing have already completed the lottery and the program eligibility screening, but you haven't yet been screened for lease eligibility. And the management company is going to be doing that as part of their screening. Like I mentioned, they're probably going to be doing some sort of credit, rental history, background checks to determine if you're eligible to rent with them. You should be aware that during this process, it's possible that the leasing office is going to invite more households to complete a lease screening than there are available units. So for example, at Hathon, there are 5 3-bedroom affordable units, but it's possible that more than 5 households will be invited from that waiting list to complete their lease screening. This is typical for management companies. They often do this. Because the process of leasing units is slowed down by households who maybe don't qualify for their lease screening. So it's nothing out of the ordinary, but just be aware of that. So even if you're the first household on a waiting list, you do not want to immediately give notice to your current landlord because you haven't yet been approved by the management company. So just keep that in mind. Don't jump the gun right after the lottery. You want to get through the full process before giving notice to make sure that nothing falls through. So at this point in the process would be when it's particularly beneficial to have a place on the waiting list that's near the top. So if you are the top household on the waiting list, you have the first chance to reserve an affordable unit. So if you have the top position on the 1-bedroom waiting list, you're going to have the first choice at reserving one of those 1-bedroom affordable units. This is true even if another applicant who's positioned further down the waiting list happens to complete their lease eligibility with the management office before you do. You, as the person in the top spot there, is going to be able to tour the unit and make your decision first. And you can base that decision off of whatever is important to you. So maybe you want to be in a certain part of the building. You want to sign a lease for a certain date. Whatever variables are important to you, you'll be able to take into consideration. And then the second household on each waiting list will have second choice of the remaining units, and so on. So once leased, you're done with screenings until the lease renewal date. So at that point, we hope that you've been enjoying the unit and want to continue living there beyond the first year of your lease. If you do, you're going to need to recertify your income with either SEB Housing or the management office prior to your lease renewal. If during that first year, your income increased, and you're now above that 80% of area median income for your household, that's fine. Households will remain eligible for the affordable apartments as long as the household income doesn't exceed 140% of AMI. Page 16 of the information packet lists the 140% figures for the different household sizes, but just to give you an example, a household size of 2 would have qualified for the lottery with an income at or below $89,500. And then that same household can make up to $125,300 at the time of their recertification in order to remain eligible to rent an affordable apartment. So gives you quite a bit of leeway there within a 1-year span if your income does increase. That covers what I wanted to get through from the information packet. So again, you can find the lottery application and the information packet on our website under I'd like to rent, rental opportunities, and then Medway Hathon has its own page there. I'll stick around for a couple minutes here. If there's any other questions, you can go ahead and unmute yourself or put them into the chat. And then again, just a reminder, any questions after tonight that you may not have thought about or thought to ask right now, you can email us at info@sebhousing.com. All right, if there's no questions, just encourage you again to get your applications in and let us know if you have questions after tonight. Thanks for joining in. Have a good night.